At UFC 281, we saw a changing of the guard as Alex Pereira took the middleweight title from Israel Adesanya.
Down goes the champion!
The win also blew open the middleweight division, as many who had failed to claim the belt were given new life now that Pereira was the king at 185 pounds. But how likely is it that this time next year, Pereira will still be the champ? How about we look at the middleweight contenders who could challenge Pereira in the coming months? It's only right that we start this off by talking about the second best middleweight on the planet, the former champ, Israel Adesanya. Those who saw their title fight would know how close Adesanya was to retaining his belt. The judges had him up 3 rounds to 1 against Pereira, which seemed to be the consensus scorecard. Adesanya had managed the distance well for the most part and even rocked Pereira in the first round and showed some glaring grappling holes in Pereira's game in the third round. However, Adesanya credited Pereira's calf kicks for taking his movement away and minimizing the effectiveness of his footwork, which ultimately made him a standing target for Pereira's powerful combinations. So how would a rematch go between the two? More of the same? Is Pereira really Adesanya's kryptonite? Well, not necessarily. Adesanya has performed well against Pereira despite coming up short. Plus, Israel has the backing of one of the best camps in the game, and now we'll have more footage on Pereira for the next time the two fight. And Adesanya will likely be the one to get the first crack at the new champ, so we could see a more wrestling-heavy attack along with better leg attack defense, which could mean that Adesanya will have his elite footwork longer into the fight and could do well staying out of danger. So by no means is Pereira's belt safe if he were to face off with Adesanya again. But there are other noteworthy contenders too. One that comes to mind right away is the former middleweight champ Robert Whittaker. Since losing his belt to Adesanya, Whittaker has been sort of a gatekeeper for the title.
Careful.
As he has easily defeated all other contenders. But he couldn't get past Stylebender. But now that won't be an issue. So how would Whittaker fare against Pereira? Well, the natural reaction might be that Pereira will win because he defeated someone that Whittaker couldn't. But MMA math doesn't work so cleanly. Instead, styles make matchups, and Whittaker's grappling-heavy attacks in the Adesanya rematch might hint at the type of style he'll be bringing if he steps into the octagon against Pereira. Now, there is no doubt that Pereira's lack of ground game was exposed in the title fight. Adesanya is far from an elite grappler. In fact, when he took Pereira down, that was his first ever takedown in the UFC. And yet, he was still able to control and prevent Pereira from getting back to his feet. And now this isn't the first time that Pereira was taken down. In fact, he was taken down in his very first UFC fight, but was able to get back to his feet and land a flying knee knockout. So Pereira is getting better and will improve his takedown defense. But will he have enough time to do so? If the two were to fight next, Whittaker would have a clear advantage on the ground, and he'll likely be able to take Pereira down too. He managed 4 takedowns the last time he fought Stylebender, and if he were to secure that many against Pereira, well, it's hard not to see how he doesn't submit him. But simultaneously, to take Pereira down, you have to come close to him, and the closer you come, the more danger you are in. Pereira is hands down one of the best strikers in the game and possesses a dangerous left hook and a versatile striking package that includes head kicks, flying knees, and lightning-fast uppercuts. Plus, he has seen some of the highest levels of striking, so he won't easily fall for feints. Not to mention the size and strength of Pereira. Even Whittaker was in awe at how much bigger Pereira looked compared to Stylebender.
Did you see the size of the fella?
However, with that being said, if someone like Whittaker gets a hold of him, he'll most likely end up on his back. And that's why Whittaker might be a worse matchup for Pereira than Stylebender. And speaking of grapplers, there is another one waiting in the wings to get his shot at Pereira after seeing Stylebender take him down. We are, of course, talking about none other than Khamzat Chimaev, who wasted no time in calling out the new 185-pound champ. Chimaev has even said he's ready to fight Pereira in December or in Brazil in January. And it's hard to fault Chimaev's confidence as he's pretty much looked like the best wrestler in MMA with his past few performances.
Oh, nice job by Chimaev! Oh my goodness!
So if styles make fights, Chimaev might have the worst possible fighting style for someone like Pereira. We mentioned Whittaker's wrestling, yet he only has a 37% takedown accuracy. However, many people will still be confident in Whittaker's chances of taking Pereira down to the mat. But when we have Chimaev, who has a 57% takedown accuracy and goes for 3.5 submission attempts per 15 minutes, compare that to the UFC average of 0.56, and you know the kind of grappling threat you have on your hands. But one thing to consider would be Pereira's size. Pereira could easily fight in the 205-pound weight division, and Chimaev is still toggling back and forth between 185 and 170. So that extra length that Pereira has, along with his natural striking advantage, could lead to some kind of Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo situation, where Pereira catches Chimaev coming in as he tries to aggressively close the distance. Now, of course, the fight is unlikely to end that quickly, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. But if Chimaev takes Pereira down, it's hard to see a scenario where he doesn't get finished. So it may be strange to say that someone with 0 fights against the top 10 middleweights might be the favorite in a title match, but Chimaev really is that special. For a while, there were many UFC middleweight contenders in this limbo state because they had all lost the stylebender convincingly, and it was hard to see how they would ever get back up into the title picture. But now that Adesanya has lost, it has opened up the path for guys like Marvin Vettori and Paulo Costa. Against Adesanya, Vettori attempted a total of 14 takedowns, but he was only successful with 4 of them, and only had a total control time of 6 minutes and 55 seconds in a 25-minute fight. So it is safe to say that Vettori didn't have the skills to exploit Adesanya's grappling, but he might have the tools to excel against Pereira. However, at the same time, Adesanya landed 122 strikes on Vettori, 44 of them being headshots. Would Pereira even need half as many strikes to take out Vettori? Of course, a large reason why Stylebender could land so much was that he could keep the fight standing. So if Pereira can improve on his takedown defense just a little, especially understanding how to use underhooks properly in the cage, he could force Vettori into a stand-up battle. This one is more of a toss-up because Vettori's grappling-heavy attacks haven't always been successful. Then we have Costa. Built like a Greek god, Costa has become a fan favorite of sorts, largely thanks to his funny Twitter page and his all-out aggressive style of fighting. Costa primarily fights standing up. In fact, nearly 85% of his overall MMA game is tailored to standing up. However, standing up with a 2-division kickboxing champ might not be the brightest idea. Just ask Sean Strickland. But does Costa have the ability to exploit Pereira's ground game? In his most recent fight against Luke Rockhold, Costa did land 2 takedowns in as many attempts. That is the most takedowns he has ever landed in a fight. So is this a new wrinkle in Costa's game, or just something specific to Rockhold? Well, it's hard to tell at the moment, but if he can take Rockhold down with success, we'd imagine he could do the same against Pereira. But at the same time, Costa ate a ton of clean power shots from a gassed and hurt Rockhold. If Pereira was the one landing those types of shots, Costa would have been long knocked out. So once again, we have a close fight between Pereira and a middleweight contender. The reality is, until Pereira shows more of his game, especially his ground game, he will always be looked at as a favorable matchup for grapplers. Stylebender also had to deal with the same thing for many years, until he kept showing everyone his improving ground game and wrestling defense. But the difference is that Adesanya had more time to improve his game before fighting the very elite at 185 pounds. Pereira won't have that same luxury. Instead, he will have to improve his game on the go as challengers come at him now that he holds the UFC title. This is an incredibly difficult thing to do, which is why so many people believe that he'll have a hard time retaining the belt. But only time will tell, as Pereira isn't the first elite striker to wear the UFC belt who had some wrestling holes in his game. The previous 2 happen to go down as the 2 greatest to ever do it at 185 pounds.